Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Bharat Army podcast, welcoming you into our homes, the Bharat Army home, to have another cricket discussion and continue our series of World Cup Rewind podcasts. And today we are going to be talking about England versus India. Oh, it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt talking about this game, but we need to talk about it anyway. I am your host, Ashish Gadvi, of course, joining you from London. Sweltering day in London, who would have thought it? And let's see who our cricket connoisseurs are this week, joining us on the podcast to talk about England versus India. We have, of course, Amish from Hounslow. How you doing, Amish?
Well, sir, how you doing?
Very good, very good. Thanks. We also have Akshay Lumba. Akshay Lumba joining us this week. Back, his return. How you doing?
I'm doing really well, actually. Especially after Liverpool won the league officially last night. I'm very happy.
Did something happen with Liverpool yesterday?
Yeah, we don't have to talk about it too much because I know Bharat Army have a big Man United following. But for me and Rav in the podcast as well, we're very happy today. You see us smiling the whole podcast.
Yes, Rav, we also have you sporting a hat this week, a Liverpool Football Club hat.
Yeah, totally unrelated. I just didn't do my hair today, you see, guys. So
I'm not sure if that's allowed on the podcast.
I could do, but no, good to be on the podcast again, guys.
Yep, I believe that. And we also have Rishi joining us. He's back. How you doing, Rishi?
All good, Ashish. Good to have you back on the podcast. Yeah.
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you, Isha Acton's #1 fan. Bhai ko dhoka diya yaar, honestly. Right, so let's talk about England versus India, shall we, at last year's Cricket World Cup. Let's talk a little bit about the run-up to this match and what was happening with both of these teams. So India were on an absolute tear. They had won every single match leading up to this, apart from the New Zealand match, which was washed out. They had beaten South Africa, Australia, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and the West Indies leading up to this. And I think the West Indies match in particular was a stunning victory, arguably the best result, I think the best performance anyway of the tournament for us. England, not so much. So this was their run of results leading up to this match. So South Africa, they won. Pakistan, they lost. Bangladesh, West Indies, and Afghanistan, they won 3 in a row. And then they lost 2, Sri Lanka and Australia in a row. So this match left them in a real precarious position where it could have actually been possible that India could have, aided in knocking England out had they actually won this match. It would have made life very, very difficult for them. So what happened in the match itself? Well, not the greatest of results for India. England won the toss, batted first, ended up posting 337, aided by a century, 111 from Johnny Bairstow, and also aided by 79 from 54 balls from Ben Stokes. And no doubt we will be talking about Ben Stokes throughout this podcast. And then India, they fell 31 runs short, 306 for 5. Keep that number in mind when we get into talking about the later stages of this match. Rohit Sharma, another century, 102 off 109 balls. Virat Kohli, 66 off 76. And then a couple of 40s from Hardik Pandya and MS Dhoni. Something tells me we might be talking about him later on in this podcast as well. So as I mentioned, England won the toss, elected to bat. They had a bit of a streaky start, a few inside edges and stuff. Some of you were at the game of this match. And tell me, what was your feelings? Amish, let's start with you because you were there on the day. What was going through your mind at the beginning of that match?
So I guess the fact that England had a slight shaky start in the first 7-8 overs and India didn't get an early wicket put us on the back foot slightly. England ended up having arguably the best partnership of the World Cup. Those overs between overs 10 and 25, I think England got about 150 runs. Game changer. We had a few chances. Luck didn't go our way. It's one of those things, but it meant we're pretty much chasing the game. England did really well. They set their team up for a big total. Openers gave them a platform. Joe Root built on it, and Ben Stokes came and did what he does. One of those things.
Indeed it was. Yeah, Rishi, what was your thoughts in that first innings?
I think, like Ami said, England got off to a very good start. I mean, probably 160 was the opening partnership that England got between Bairstow and Roy. And, I think with the pitch and the boundary that was pretty small on one side in the Edgbaston ground, I think England made use of the boundary pretty well as compared to what India did. So the bowlers didn't do much. The the difference, the mark wasn't that as been in the recent game. But I think England, managed their runs pretty well, rotated their strike ballers pretty well. So overall, England did had a better advantage, better hand as compared to us on that day.
Yeah, Akshay, you are wearing the jersey that that India wore on that day, the limited over orange and dark blue number. I'm not a fan of that jersey personally, but they wore it on that day. What was your thoughts during that first innings?
Well, I love the jersey. I think it's a brilliant jersey. My favourite jersey, actually. But yeah, it was interesting. I think when I remember being in the ground. I got there and they were very streaky at the start, edging through the slids. There was a feather off Jason Roy's glove, which we never reviewed in the end. And I was really confident at that point. And I remember after the game, Stokes had an interview and he said during the first drinks break, Jason Roy went to the toilet, ran back in the change room, and he said the spinners are a lot easier to hit than the seamers, so we're going to go after the spinners. So it was very, very clear, thought-through plan that we're going to target the spinners. And I understand why India played two spinners, because notoriously England aren't great players of spin. And many games in the past, the Indian spinners have done the England batsmen. So I understand that. A bit risky because it was a 59-metre boundary, as Rishi said. So if you're having an off day, you're going over the boundary time and time again, which is what happened. And I remember watching Jason Roy and Bairstow go absolutely crazy. And I couldn't believe what I was watching. They were walking down the track. They were reverse sweeping. They were slog sweeping. They were playing all the shots in the book. But every single ball went over the boundary practically. Well, that's at least what it felt like at the time. So it was quite demoralising. And that game, we only picked two frontline seamers along with Hardik Pandya, the all-rounder. So we didn't have too many options. We only had 5 bowlers bowl that day. Obviously, Kohli didn't give the ball to Kedar Jadhav as the 6th bowler, the way the spinners got dealt with. But you have to give credit to Bairstow and Roy, and obviously Stokes later on. They batted absolutely class, fearlessly, and with real intent. And I think intent is going to be a word we use a lot in this podcast. And England certainly used intent. So fair play to them. They took us to the attack. It was a must-win game, so huge pressure for them. And then they put on a really good score.
Rav, Akshay says he understands why India played 2 spinners. Those 2 spinners, Chahal went for 88 runs from his 10 overs and Kuldeep Yadav went for 72 with only the return of 1 wicket between them. Do you understand why India played 2 spinners?
In general, yeah, but not for that game. I think that if you look at, I think there was a quote made after the game that 2 days out, both sides obviously knew the conditions. England's strategy was different. They went for 1 spinner with Rashid, and he bowled into the long boundary, bowling leg breaks. He barely bowled a googly, and when he did, it got hit for 6 because of the short boundary. And then we had Liam Plunkett bowling into the long end of the boundary, bowling bounces cross seam, which was 110 metres. So they clearly did their planning. And look, it's very different taking on 2 quality wrist spinners when you've got an adequate 70, 80 metre boundary. But when it was so short, like Akshay says, they were mishitting some of them. Stokes, some of those reverse sweeps were amazing, but one of them he top edged and it just cleared the boundary easily. So it takes the skill of those bowlers out of the game, even if they do bowl well, but it was quite a flat wicket. So I just felt it was the wrong decision and India's composition should have been different.
And I don't think we can use... Sorry, I don't think we can use that as a justification in the sense of England exploited the smaller boundaries or that suited them because they executed their plans. Like we played on the same pitch, same boundaries, etc., etc. Like Rav said, England just executed their plan a lot better than India did, and our tactically, like hindsight's a beautiful thing, but tactically it didn't pay off.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking about the boundaries, and obviously I said that we're going to be talking about Ben Stokes a lot on this podcast. And one of the things which has brought this match back from the limelight of last year's World Cup is Ben Stokes' autobiography On Fire, available at all good bookstores and some rubbish ones too. And with Ben Stokes' autobiography, this is what he had to say. Me being the good journalist that I am, I have it in front of me. And so this is what he had to say about Virat Kohli's post-match conference. He said, "It was weird to hear India captain Kohli whinging about the size of the boundaries at the post-match presentation ceremony. He said the toss was vital, adding, especially looking at the boundary that was quite short. It was 59 meters, which coincidentally is the minimum amount required in an international match. Quite bizarre on a flat pitch. If batsmen are able to reverse sweep you for six on a 59-meter boundary, there is not much you can do. And one side was 82 meters." He goes on to say, "I have never heard such a bizarre complaint after a match. It's actually the worst complaint you could ever make. Both teams have to bat out there and yet the same number of balls. So how can playing area's dimensions be an advantage to one team or the other?" Ouch. I mean, like, I feel like he's really...
Right side.
Yeah, I think that's basically it. Rav, what do you think?
They picked the right side.
Right.
India, they wouldn't be able to hit all those boundaries if India had picked the right side. England knew that was a short boundary, so they didn't allow India to have spinners who would bowl into that arc where they could then hit that. So they didn't. I mean, we can all say India. Why didn't India hit that many boundaries? England made it impossible to do that because of the way that they bowled. They knew that boundary was there and they bowled to it and away from it. India didn't even bother to do that. So, I mean, really, it's our fault.
India conceded 160 runs from their spinners. I think Rashid let 40 off 6 overs. That's the difference in game plan. And bearing in mind, they've got the likes of Wokes and Archer who bowl quality.
And in particular, I think in this match as well, was Liam Plunkett. His bowling was also a major influence.
India could have been chasing more runs as well. I mean, if you look at 25, 30 overs, Shami himself brought it back really nicely. So India could have been chasing much over 350, 360 if India had not carried on.
What's interesting to see here, the number of runs that England scored out of the boundaries comes up to about 180. And India managed to score just 140 runs out of the boundary. So that 40 runs is actually the difference of margin that India lost to. Also, I was just looking at the statistics of the game. Something very interesting, that India lost 3 wickets and England had lost 3 wickets at the same time, approximately close to over number 40. And what I can see is the worm was exactly at the same stage. Now, the advantage that we say that, when you're batting first, you don't know what a good target is. But with India and England being at the same stage, same runs and same wickets, India could have planned their innings going after for the next 10 overs in a better way. They could have still managed to win this game.
Well, let's talk about India's innings, shall we? Because I think that's the main thing that all of us here want to talk about. Obviously, they lost KL Rahul quite early, but from that point onwards, first 10 overs, India were 28 for 1 after 10 overs, chasing 337. Akshay, what was going through your head when this was happening?
Well, I think it was clear that there was something in it for the seam bowlers at the start. England also struggled against our seamers initially. There was something in it with the new ball, and they also nicked off a couple of times. We nicked off a couple of times. And I think after losing KL early, you had Rohit Sharma and Kohli at the crease, chasing 330, right? And the next 4 recognised batsmen are Rishabh Pant, Hardik Pandya, Dhoni and Jadhav. Chasing 330, the only way you're going to win that match is if Kohli and Rohit Sharma stay there at the crease. If we lose another wicket, Kohli or Rohit early, it's almost done with the lineup we had after that. And I think that reflected in the mindset of Kohli and Rohit as well. That they knew they had to be there and push it closer if India are going to have any chance of winning that game. So I do forgive them for having a slow start. They obviously wanted to get their eye in and make sure that they're there to take it deep. And to be fair to them, I know people on this forum, in this podcast, will have a different opinion to me entirely.
Hold on. Actually, one second. So you've just said, India didn't really have a lineup after those 3. So what was Kedar Jadhav doing in the team? Because he didn't bowl on a tiny boundary.
You have to ask Ravi Shastri, man. I didn't make the team, man. didn't necessarily agree with them being there either.
Well, I'll tell you what, Akshay. One person who does disagree with you very strongly is, the fifth member of this podcast, Ben Stokes. Because if I could just bring him back into it for a moment, this is what he had to say about Rohit Sharma and Kohli. The way that Rohit Sharma and Kohli played was mystifying. I know that we bowled brilliantly well during this period, but the way they went about their batting just seemed bizarre. They allowed their team to get so far behind the game. They showed no desire to put any pressure back onto our team, content instead to just drift along, and a tactic that was clearly playing into our hands. Rav, Ben Stokes is absolutely lashing us on this autobiography.
Yeah.
Ben Stokes is right. I mean, this is not an isolated incident. India do not chase totals above 320 particularly well unless one of Rohit Sharma or Kohli gets 100 and then they accelerate in strike rate post that 100, because then they'll end up with 150, 160, and India will usually get those runs. But the issue is that we had Rohit, who got just under 100 strike rate, 100, and then Virat with another 10 ball differential there as well. I appreciate, obviously, they started slowly because of maybe the issues with the order to come. But, I just think that there was so much left to do that Dhoni for 11 and over against some pretty good death bowling by England. Their death bowling throughout the tournament was pretty consistently good. Is a really tall order, and actually he needed slightly more support from the guys at the top to give him an equation that would work, and I don't think it did.
Well, Rishi, we saw another Rohit Sharma century in this match, so you can't really fault him too much. But this was actually his slowest century of the World Cup.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, if you look at the centuries that Rohit Sharma scored, the South Africa one was the slowest one, a strike rate of 85. But I mean, what we've seen in the past, that after a certain number of runs, Rohit Sharma and Virat Kohli up the ante, scoring ante. And looking at the strike rate that I have in front of me, I mean, Rohit Sharma strike rate of 94, Virat Kohli 87. With the number of balls and the runs they scored was, shocking to us the way they were batting. And to be honest, with Rishabh Pant coming in with not much experience in England condition and with the great bowling that England had, Hardik Pandya did pretty well, Dhoni pretty well. So, you can't just put the blame on Dhoni like what happened after the game. So it has to be Rohit and Kohli who had to take a bit of blame and, say that, okay, we didn't score the number of runs that we should have. And plus, I mean, Kedar Jadhav just not fitting into the team again. Didn't bowl a single over, batted for 13 balls, scored 12 runs. Definitely Jadeja would have been a better option if we would have, had him in the team.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, Kedar Jadhav found his way into this opening lineup. And like Akshay said, we might have to ask Ravi Shastri what that selection was doing. Ravi Shastri is obviously your area of expertise. What do you think was going on with the selection in this game?
Like I say, I think, if you're 2 days out from a game and you see something that you call in a press conference the shortest boundary you've ever seen, I just would have thought you'd have made some adjustment for that at some point. And it just doesn't feel like we did that. Also, I think we'll talk more about kind of the way we approached the chase, but I never felt after the first, 10 overs, 20 overs of England's batting that India would be chasing anything under 300. So, we should have made an approach batting wise from the outset that would enable us to do that. I just think that what happened was that England got really fired up. It was a must-win game for them. Yes, we had a lot of us in the crowd, but there were a lot of England fans as well. And I just think that maybe the top two guys, they just needed a bit of time and they maybe froze a little bit. But, it led to a situation where Dhoni had such a huge job to do that even the great man himself, against some really good death bowling, just couldn't do it.
Well, yeah, let's talk about...
Couldn't do it or didn't want to do it?
Well, hold on. Everybody wait, because this is what we're going to get onto now. But first, let's take it back to Mr. Stokes. Don't make him feel left out. And this is actually the passage of his autobiography, which I think has created the most amount of controversy after this book was released. So this is exactly word for word what he had to say about MS Dhoni. arguably, the way that MS Dhoni played when he came in with 112 runs needed from 11 overs was even stranger. He appeared more intent on singles than sixes. Even with a dozen balls remaining, India could still have won. Yes, it was a daunting task, but it was still possible. Yet there was little or no intent from him or his partner, Kedar Jadhav. To me, while victory is still possible, you always go for broke. Akshay, Lumba, your comments.
Well, it was interesting. And I remember in the stadium when he was sort of nerdling and nudging, when the rate's getting higher and higher and higher, there was still a calmness amongst the Indian fans because Dhoni's done this so many times before. We know he's got a plan and he'll get us over the line. So we had plenty of faith. And as the overs got closer and closer, we started looking at each other and thought, what is going on here? At this point, we still hadn't hit a six all match. I don't know how many England hit. We hadn't hit 1 6 by this point. And then it sort of was unforgivable for me, really, that Dhoni and Jadhav decided to play for net run rate when you didn't need net run rate. We were clearly at the top of the table. I think we'd practically qualified by that point. For me, paying fans, people watching all over the world, we want to see India win or at least push to win. If we lose by 20, 30 runs, doesn't really matter. But when you're accepting that loss and basically gifting England the win, it's not like we needed 25 and over to win. We needed 11, 12, 13 and over.
That's a walk in the park.
Which is very, very doable for someone like MS Dhoni. Understand we have a long tail after Kedar Jadhav. There isn't much batting, but you'd always think while MS Dhoni's there at the crease, you got a fighting chance. But I was bemused at the time. I couldn't believe what I was watching. And people slate Kohli and Rohit for the way they approached it, but they approached it with a view to win. They wanted to get India close to that target. When Dhoni came in,
28 for 1 after 10 overs. Are they pushing as hard as they could?
Well, it's a long game. 50 overs is a long time to bat. And you got to be there. When not both of them got out, we still had a decent chance. The run rate was high, but it was still a very, very doable task. But one thing is for sure that they did play to win. They just played the long game.
Okay, Amish, let's go over to you, Amish. What was your thoughts? And obviously you were in the ground as well at this point. So what was it like for you?
Sure, it was tense, but I'm going to agree and disagree with everyone's statement so far. So Akshay is blaming it on Dhoni and Kedar and justifying Rohit and Kohli. Rav and Rishi are saying you have to look at the top 2, 3 as well as looking at Dhoni Kedar, right? Now, I'm not saying Dhoni could have played with a different intent. However, we put Dhoni in a situation which is making the impossible possible. Yes, he's done it a number of times, but that doesn't mean we can rely on him doing it again and again. It's not always easy. They've got Wokes and Archer. Archer, one of the best bowlers in the World Cup. Wokes, who bowled brilliantly that game. 10, 11 and over with a period to play for. Now, 28 runs from the first 10 overs. Slowest start India had in the World Cup. Rohit Sharma, like you guys have said, normally he always builds on that, but he didn't. And Kohli, Rav said he was about 10 runs short of a runner ball, but Kohli is usually fantastic at keeping the runs ticking at a runner ball. So whether it's 10 balls or not, there was a slightly different intent from the start. Yes, we had to rebuild from losing KL, but what I'm not happy to accept is us saying Dhoni should have done this or he should have done that, because we lost as a team. Win together, lose together. You can't point at Dhoni because he didn't do the magic he has done on a number of occasions.
We're not blaming him for not doing the magic. If he would have tried to do the magic and failed, no issues whatsoever.
You're expecting him to have been able to go in and do the magic. I'm not justifying the intent. I can't answer that. But Akshay, have you won a World Cup before? Have you led India? Have you led India to a number of trophies?
Listen,
on what basis are you questioning the rationale of someone?
Okay, hold on. But Amish, the one thing that I do want to question is even Ben Stokes is saying with 12 balls left they could have still won, and they're not going for it.
Sure. So I'm saying there must have been a strategy from the start of the innings, because it wasn't just at the end where Dhoni acted like he doesn't want to win, because you could question some of the tactics. Even having Pant and Pandya bang together in the middle, like you could raise questions about that. So there's a number of things that lead to why didn't India win, as opposed to just the intent Dhoni showed at the end. I'm not justifying the way it was bad. But I don't think it's just on Dhoni and Kedar. I think there was we can speculate as much as we want, but we're not behind the dressing room where tactics are discussed.
I know, but obviously, in hindsight, you can say that it was a team thing. But I think the point you're missing is that they decided to play for net run rate. Before Dhoni came in, that was never the sort of the thinking. And
how do you know that? So you think Kohli thought, Jal, it's okay, I've got two inexperienced guys coming in after. It's okay for me to let it get to 10, 11 and over. No, I don't think he did. There must have been some underlying thought process as opposed to, don't worry, guys, let's just stay in and let the required run rate
I think
build.
it was very clear that Dhoni and Jadhav decided to play for net run rate at the end. I think that's a known fact. I don't know why. I don't agree with it because I don't think we needed net run rate, but they did decide to do that, which for me isn't the way. Kohli's always said in test matches he'll always play for the win. He doesn't play for the draw. So it's weird to see that in an ODI that the strategy is to not play for the win.
Rishi, what do you think the strategy was?
Ashish, I think I'm looking at the statistics at the moment. We lost Pandey in the 45th over, needed approximately 71 out of the last 5 overs, 14 and over. I think we could have still managed to go on and win this game. We have to credit England bowlers the way they bowled in the death overs. But I think what people are missing out is that Kedar Jadhav didn't score a lot of runs as well. MS Dhoni didn't get that support as well either. So I think we instead of going after MS Dhoni and Kedar Jadhav, you can give some credit to the England bowlers as well, the way they bowled. Quite possible they made it so difficult for MS Dhoni and Jadhav to score runs that they didn't manage to get those 70 runs. So for me, I think I don't know what went behind the scene, the strategy, but I think it was the Indian team.
Rav, when we talk about the strategy from those two at that point, Dhoni and Kedar Jadhav, I think that Akshay pretty much has the nail on the head where he says that they were playing for net run rate. But do you think there might also be another element to it, the fact that Dhoni possibly didn't want to expose our tail end?
Yeah, I think that's definitely one of the things that I've thought about in the past. I think if you look at India's batting, once you get below 7, Bumrah doesn't bat, Shami will hit a few, Chahal can't bat. So you could easily go 7, 8, 9, 10 quite quickly within the space of maybe 2 overs, especially with someone like Jofra Archer. Whereas if you look at England, one of their big kind of mantras after the 2015 World Cup was just keep hitting the ball all the way down at high strike rates because we bat all the way down. We've got enough cover for somebody like Plunkett who can hit a 6 off a last ball to win a game, and Rashid who's got millions of first-class hundreds. So really, I think there's a big difference there because after Dhoni, and actually Pandya's wicket I felt was key because he was striking the ball really well, and I felt that he played really well. But when he got out, I thought India's chances went down significantly because if he carries on hitting, Dhoni is allowed to play his game, get to the end point, and then raise his strike rate the way we've seen him do so often. So I think there were many factors behind the failure. But again, India's composition, the way that we chase targets above 320, it's so geared around the top 3 that it's them or bust. And we've seen it in knockouts, we've seen it in finals, and this is no different.
Well, Rav, I actually think you might be a little bit of a punditing oracle because on one of our earlier podcasts, you said that India played dated one-day cricket. And with that, I would like to read you an excerpt from Ben Stokes' autobiography. He says, compared to other leading nations, India was still using quite an outdated method of playing to build their totals, keeping wickets in hand in a bid to cash in at the back end of the innings. Pretty much exactly what you've said, Rav. So does the buck stop?
England.
We've become England. Does that buck stop with the coaching and with the tactics and with your best mate, Ravi Shastri?
Yeah. It's the leadership team that they're accountable for that. I mean, the selectors obviously have a part to play. They didn't feed us with a number 4 and messed around the whole Raidu situation for longer than it probably needed to be, given the end outcome. But the leadership team must take culpability because they are there to prepare the team to a point where they can go out and do their best job. Now, England, it's been well documented about the turnaround post 2015. They tore up the manual and they did it a new way because they realised they were getting nowhere with the old way. And I appreciate we say India win 80-odd% of their games because they're bilaterals. We don't play the right cricket in ICC tournaments to win those tournaments. Otherwise, we would have more trophies. It's simple.
Yeah, a little bit like what Jurgen Klopp did with Liverpool, some might say. So with all of this, with obviously the run chase kind of pattering out, Amish, obviously you at the ground, what was kind of the feeling that was going on once the match had finished?
It was a confused feeling. Like India, we got used to winning, so this was new for all of us, and I guess we already qualified, and therefore, I think I'm following Rav's point of we just wanted to secure our spot and not impact our net run rate, not expose. Like if we got bowled out, it would have probably done something more to our confidence as well. So it was really confusing. The atmosphere was odd, very very strange. But then again, I'm not sure that our approach or our approach to matches is sustainable throughout a tournament. So England peaked at the right time, and unfortunately, India had that dip. But it's not. I think that was a one-off, and England were just the better side. We have to accept that and not come up with excuses on our end. England played better cricket, and that's what happened on the day. So disappointing, but it is what it is. Like, you just have to move on to the next game, and yeah.
I think one thing I would say though is that it did completely change the tournament, and it changed the run of form, because England going into that, they'd lost at Lords against Australia. India were full of confidence, and they didn't really look beatable until that point. And after that, I just felt the whole tournament changed. I felt that England had this new lease of life. They had the confidence, and then they went to the semis and they beat Australia, who've never lost in a semi. So, they went to another level after that. And I just think that, India's performance before that was so convincing. It just turned the tables.
I think
go ahead, Akshay.
No, I was going to say, I think cricket is the biggest confidence sport out of all the sports, right? And if India would have gone into the semi-final unbeaten, we would have felt absolutely invincible, and things would have changed. And not only things would have changed in terms of confidence going into the semi-final, we probably would have had a different opponent as well. And New Zealand have been our bogey team in ICC tournaments over the years, and I would have loved to play anyone really apart from New Zealand, even though on paper we thought that would be the easiest fixture. But obviously, if we would have beaten England, they would have been knocked out, and we probably would have ended up playing Pakistan. So going into a semi-final against Pakistan, unbeaten after hammering them at Old Trafford earlier on in the tournament, who knows what could have happened? So I do think there was more value we would have got from winning that match, other than apart from the fact, we've almost qualified, it doesn't really matter, play for net run rate. I think actually we missed a trick there by not really pushing and winning that match. I think it would have completely changed the dynamics of the tournament.
Yeah, I think momentum is really the word to take away from all of this, because like you're saying, a momentum in a tournament where a team is kind of going forward and building on strength after strength. When you get to a match where it's like, we don't really need to win it, we've already qualified for the semis, just that single loss can just create such a seed of doubt within the team. And I think that from Ben Stokes' autobiography, from going through those moments, you can actually see like a real insight into the opposition team and what they think of India. And I think the feeling that kind of came out of it is that, wow, these guys are actually really beatable.
Yeah, I think you always lose the X factor if you go into a semi-final with an unbeaten team. The team that you're playing are going to be, absolutely bricking it. You're going to think, how are we going to beat these guys? No one can beat them. How are we going to beat them? When you watch a team like England beat us fairly convincingly in the end, suddenly you think, actually, these guys are human. We can beat them, and it gives the opposition some confidence as well. So, it's, like you said, momentum is a key factor. And I think anyone here that plays cricket themselves will completely agree with this. And people have said in the past, you don't want to peak too early in tournaments. You want to get your losses out of the way early. I think that's a load of rubbish. I think you've got to win every single game. If you keep winning, you will continue to win. As soon as you start losing, it becomes a habit.
Yeah, Rishi, what was your thoughts on the way that this match really kind of changed the fortune of these two teams in the tournament?
Ashish, to be honest, I mean, looking at the way things happened, England ended up winning the tournament after, beating India and then winning all their games back to back. We lost to New Zealand. The India-New Zealand game, the group game, got washed out. I think what a lot of people forgot, that we lost momentum as soon as Shikhar Dhawan got injured at the Australia game. Shikhar Dhawan was supposed to be our opening batsman. KL Rahul was supposed to play the role of 2 down, number 4. And I think with Shikhar Dhawan getting injured, KL Rahul opening, it messed up our entire batting order. And with no alternative, with Vijay Shankar getting injured as well, and with no proper number 4, I think that did help us, lose momentum. And obviously, I mean, the England game, like Akshay said, would have been, a different situation had we beaten them. We would have knocked them out of the tournament and then played Pakistan in the semi-final. But, I mean, at the end of the day, England played better cricket, ended up winning the game and then the tournament. So, yeah, full credit to them.
Yeah, of course. I mean, as it kind of panned out, England needed to win 4 games in a row, basically. They needed to beat us, they needed to beat New Zealand, they needed to win the semi-final and then the final to win the World Cup. And they did all of that. They won all 4 games leading up to the World Cup. And so nobody can really take that away from them. But let's add a little bit of masala into this conversation, shall we? Because there are some conspiracy theorists out there who talk about this match, and I love me a good conspiracy theory. Akshay, there are people out there who say that India intentionally lost this match to knock Pakistan out of the tournament. Your thoughts on said conspiracy theory?
Yeah, well, I think that's a load of rubbish, really. I think India would have wanted nothing more than to play Pakistan in the semi-final. And the reason I say that is because, the record that we've got against them in World Cups, the ability to handle pressure, and just the way we annihilated them in the group stage match. I would see it as a fairly easy win. I think the bookies' odds would have reflected that as well. So I think the 3 other teams that they ended up qualifying were far better sides. On paper, obviously, India v Pakistan brings a whole new dynamic, but on paper, Pakistan are the weakest side of the lot, which is one of the reasons why they didn't qualify. But I don't think there's anything like that. I think India would have relished the opportunity to knock Pakistan out of another World Cup.
Yeah, especially in a semi-final as well. So let's just get some final thoughts about this match and just what your overriding memories were of the day, what your overriding thoughts were. I'll tell you what, let's stick with you, Akshay, because obviously you were there. What was your kind of lasting memories of the day and being there?
Well, having a match at Edgbaston is always special. The atmosphere in the Eric Hollies was electric as always. We always have a good crack with the Barmy Army. Songs were being belted out throughout the whole match. Lots of energy. The door drums were all over. So it was a fantastic day from a supporter's perspective. The cricket was great to watch as well. It was an exciting game. Ended up being a bit of a damp squid, but apart from that, it was a great match of cricket up until the last sort of 10 overs or so. So it was a great day. The result that we didn't want, but the feeling at the end of the game was, we're still favourites to win this World Cup, and we had a lot of confidence going into the next 2 matches and on to the semis that we would continue our winning streak. Didn't happen in the end, but a fantastic picture as India v England always is.
Amish, what was your lasting memories of the day?
So as Akshay said, the atmosphere at Edgbaston is always brilliant. So that was really, really good. But from a cricket perspective, I think that was probably my least enjoyable day for obvious reasons. And it's probably the one, right, that I try to forget because it just brings back frustrating conversations and it encourages bad behavior and attributes from Indian fans of pointing fingers. And I'm not a fan of that. It's a shame that happened, and you could argue change the course of the World Cup, but I'm not sure I fully agree with Akshay's point about Pakistan, because I think a lot of people didn't want to play Pakistan again in that World Cup. And
why
England
not?
peaked at the. Do you know what? I'm not sure. I think we beat them comfortably. We're happy to walk away, see them at the next World Cup. Nothing to do with that's going to impact us going to the final. I didn't really care who we played. I just wanted us to get there. We got there. We lost on the day. No one expected New Zealand. I don't think anyone thought New Zealand would beat us. I think we were pretty happy with facing New Zealand in the semis. It just didn't work out. England, as Rav has highlighted for countless number of times, they had a strategy for the World Cup, and their strategy worked. So I don't think we can complain. Like, India played brilliantly throughout the tournament, except that one day, which probably you can talk about in a negative limelight. Otherwise, one of those things.
Yeah, and I suppose with Pakistan as well, you never know which Pakistan you're going to get. You know, the team that we've beaten in World Cups, or there's just that fear that those cornered tigers might come roaring back. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Rishi, what was your memories of the day?
I think, like Akshay summed it up, one of the best days to watch cricket, not the perfect result. Birmingham, Edgbaston's been really special. We beat Pakistan back in 2017. We won the Champions Trophy 2013 there. I have some fond memories going back to Edgbaston. And at the England game, the way Bharat Army took over, stand 22. So many of us there. The experience was unbelievable, but not the result. But overall, it was a good experience other than the result.
Yeah, Rav, you said leading up to this podcast that you still haven't been able to rewatch the highlights of this match. Were you able to rewatch them after that?
I think it was a great day. Edgbaston, I remember the crowds to get in. There was the queues were massive. It was a great day. I think there was a lot of hope from the fans that we could make a really emphatic statement for the World Cup by beating the hosts. Look, India's journey came to an end before the final, so we didn't even get a chance to avenge it. But I think it could have been another way, but India's tournament wasn't meant to be. I think as we've gone through this series of podcasts, we've seen there's quite a few factors now behind this. And, I think that reflects probably the semi-final position that India had. We don't talk about Kane Williamson, how well he led New Zealand. They deserve their final spot on merit, really.
Yes, indeed. And I think, my lasting memory of this match really is the inch-perfect plan that India pulled out to, of course, knock Pakistan out of the tournament. I think also when you've spoken about, this tournament wasn't meant to be, that then will lead us into our next podcast that we're going to do in our World Cup Rewind series, in which we are going to be talking about India versus New Zealand in the semi-final. Get your tissues ready for that podcast, everybody. And I don't mean in a good way. So that is all we have time for on this podcast. Thank you very much for joining us. We'd like to thank our special guest, Ben Stokes, for joining us on this podcast as well. And, hit us up on all of our social media at the Bharat Army. Like, share, subscribe on Instagram, Spotify, on YouTube as well. And we will see you all on the next podcast. Jai Hind.
ये दोस्ती अब नहीं